Hello and welcome to AGTP Daily, where we discuss the most important tech stories in the US and abroad. Today is Monday, the 23rd of March, 2026. Let's get right to it. There's a lot to talk about today. ChatGPT free and Go users will start to get ads. This should not be shocking to anybody who's been watching this space. Did SaaSTR's Jason Lemkin say, it's just easier to work with AI agents than humans? Is that really true? And we will also be joined by Harry Folloder, the Chief Commercial Officer at Krisp, to explore how voice AI is reshaping contact centers and enterprise communication. Okay, it looks like ChatGPT is going to introduce a Google-style ad business, and this shouldn't be huge news to anybody who's really been paying attention. They're apparently expanding advertising in ChatGPT for low-cost users. And on one level, as I've said, it's not really that surprising. AI is expensive to build, expensive to train, and expensive to serve at a global scale. And to be fair, if a company of OpenAI's size wants to offer powerful tools to hundreds of millions of people at little or no cost, it's just got to find a way to pay for it. It's got to find some way to pay for it. And advertising, for better or for worse, for decades, has been one of the internet's most effective mechanisms for subsidy like this. So there is a positive case here, and I think we need to take this seriously, right? It's very important, and it's going to be paradigm changing, I think, for the way that ChatGPT works, in the same way that it was paradigm changing for the way that Google worked when they implemented ads in their business. The most obvious argument in favor of ads is accessibility, right? So if you just think about it, if advertising helps keep advanced artificial intelligence tools available to people who cannot or will not pay for premium access, then it broadens the reach of the technology, and that can't be bad for all of us, right? And that matters. Not every student, not every freelancer, not every teacher even, not every small business owner, or even first-time user is going to pay a monthly subscription for AI assistance, even if they want to. Maybe they just simply can't afford it. And an ad-supported tier can lower the barrier to entry and make sophisticated tools available to a much wider audience. I think this is a win at some level, right? There is also kind of a broader market argument. If advertising helps fund infrastructure, model improvements, and faster product development, then all users may indirectly benefit from a stronger and more sustainable platform. And in that case, ads are not simply clutter. In this case, yeah, they are part of the financial machinery that allows a company to keep investing in quality, scale, and availability. And we know for a fact actually, that these big companies, these big AI companies, they need money. They're not making enough money right now. And we know that just based on how much money they've recently raised. We talked about this last week and the week before. OpenAI just raised $110 billion from NVIDIA, from Amazon, and from SoftBank. They need money. And if ads is one way that they're going to do it, let's just say that this is maybe a pragmatic point here as well. Many users on the internet have already made peace with this idea that they're going to have ads. Look, I'm on YouTube all day, right? And I pay a premium for YouTube. I do, because I don't want to see the ads. I think it's a really bad experience, and we'll get to that bad experience towards the middle and the end of this segment. Some people, though, they just can't even afford to go ad-free on YouTube, right? Search is filled with ads as well. Social media is filled with ads. I mean, that's how Twitter makes money as well, right? Video platforms like Vimeo, like YouTube, all filled with ads. And to be fair, much of our digital economy works by offering a free or low-cost product in exchange for exposure to commercial messages. I mean, think about it. That's how television was built, right? Do you know why they call soap operas soap operas? There was no soap on the show, but they were sponsored originally by soap companies. And from that perspective, it kind of makes sense that AI may just be simply joining the existing structure of the consumer internet. And to be fair, the business internet as well, right? Because the flip side of the consumer internet is every company that wants to reach an audience with their ads, with their products. If you think about it, Amazon itself, even on their own platform, a lot of the product placement that they have is sponsored. I don't know the exact numbers, but my guess is they make just as much, if not more money from ad placement and product placement on Amazon's e-commerce platform than they do from the sales of the e-commerce stuff that they have. Okay? But ads are not always great. And I remember seeing I remember seeing, where was it? Somewhere on YouTube, actually. This is a few years ago. This kind of dystopian vision of the future where, like, literally you walk down the street. I think this was when Google Glass came out. It could have been 12 or 13 years ago. And somebody had glasses on, and everywhere there were these location-based ads just like popping into their vision. There are ads everywhere on the street and then ads everywhere in their eyes. And it was kind of dystopian, right? There is a negative case for serving ads, especially in the context of conversational AI. It's not always going to be great. Because if you think about it, ChatGPT, the way I use it, and probably the way you use it too, and whether it's ChatGPT or Anthropic or any of these other AI models, right? It's not just another feed or search page. It's an environment people increasingly use to think, to plan, to write, to learn, to compare all these things that they're doing. And that distinction in this case matters, right? The closer a product gets to functioning like an assistant, I don't want my assistant selling me stuff, right? The more intrusive advertising could begin to feel. In social media, users expect interruption. I mean, that's what it is by definition. Social media is just one big interruption. But in a chatbot, users are often engaged and more focused. They're trying to get stuff done. They're trying to have some kind of cognitive activity. They're thinking. They're trying to accomplish something. And that's precisely, in my mind, why the ad clutter matters way more here. I do not like, and frankly, I do not think I'm alone on this one, ad-filled environments. The ads are almost never relevant to me. They're in the way. They come at a time where I don't need them. And I told you, in most cases, I will pay a small amount of money every month just so I don't have to see ads. They don't know who I am. They think they do. They think they're following me around the internet and they can have positively placed ads that are going to be relevant to me. I don't have that experience at all. And to be fair, I think Google has turned into a cesspool of poor ad placement. Really, like when I search for something, I just want to search for the thing. Give me the answer. Get out of my way. Like, seriously, I would pay for Google search if I could so I didn't have to get the ads. And even if the ads are clearly labeled in a way that they are on Google, even if they're placed below the main answer, this is in the chatbot or even on Google itself, even if they don't technically alter the model's response, they still affect the experience. And I would say this. They add noise, they break the flow, and in my mind, they're always altering the model's response. Okay, and the other thing is, they're introducing commercial friction into what many users experience as a tool for concentration. And I want clarity as well. I don't want my mind cluttered with an ad when I'm trying to figure something out, when I'm trying to write something great, when I'm trying to edit something, when I'm trying to get information, when I'm trying to do research. What is the ad for, right? What is the point? And they rarely add to clarity, and they don't let me concentrate. And I've said this, and I said this 5 minutes ago, but like, it has felt to me for the longest period of time that search results demonstrably changed due to paid ads. And those, I mean the real results you get. And it's so confusing for most users. We forget, right? For those of us that live in a tech bubble, we can see what's happening slowly but surely. We saw it happen on Google. We'll see it happen now, I guess, on ChatGPT. Well, frankly, I pay for it, so I won't see it, right? In the same way that I don't see it on YouTube anymore. But it's just going to be this slow burn into a really horrible experience for me. And for me, this goes to the heart of the product quality. Think about if you were in Excel. Think about if you were in Microsoft Excel. And every now and then an ad popped up. You could use Excel for free. But every now and then an ad popped up. You're like, I'm trying to do math here, right? And the ad gets in the way of you doing math. It gets in the way of you doing accounting. It gets in the way of you like creating functions that you think are going to be useful for your stock market calculations or whatever it is. How much Bitcoin you need to buy next month. The best software experiences over time tend to feel uncluttered, coherent, and intentional. And at the end of the day, they help users do what they came to do with as little distraction as possible. Again, look at the Excel example. Advertising tends to move in the opposite direction. Its purpose is not there to support the thing you're trying to accomplish. It's not there to support the task that any user is doing. What's the purpose for it to be there? Its purpose is to capture attention, redirect it, and monetize it. It's just a way to distract you from the main thing that you're doing to go do something else so you spend money on the thing that they want you to spend money on. And those goals may coexist within a functional product, but they're not the same goals at all. And again, for my money, don't like it. Particularly in a place like ChatGPT. Let's just say that, right? Again, I pay for it every month. I probably won't see these ads But there's a whole cohort of people out there that aren't paying a monthly subscription. And if the ads are out there, they're just going to get in the way. You don't want this experience to end up being like an Instagram experience where every second thing you do is some kind of ad. And that tension that's going to exist on ChatGPT becomes even more uncomfortable, I think, in the world of artificial intelligence, because the commercial layer sits really close to this idea of like this reasoning layer, this place where you're going there to think, to do research. And even if a company insists that ads do not influence answers, and even if that is mostly true, people that are using the technology and using the service still have to process the presence of a sponsored message in the same space where they're just seeking help, seeking advice, seeking analysis. Like, I want to know when I'm planning a trip, am I having an ad served to me, or is that really the highest rated hotel? Right? And how much of those results have been gamed as well. And it's not only bias we're talking about here. In some ways, it's like the entire atmosphere. Think about it. If you go out to dinner at a really nice restaurant, do you want to see ads on the walls? Do you want to see ads on the table? Do you want the waiter to come over and say anything about anything, like give a sales pitch for something that's unrelated to the dinner you're having? It's confusing and it gets in the way. And this is always going to happen when an environment gets gradually converted from free to something that is trying to monetize. And remember, that monetization is not necessarily completely related to what you're trying to get done. It's not helping you at all. Okay, and we know this from our historical precedents. Many of our digital platforms that we use today began with very clean, elegant experiences. Again, Google is the perfect example of this, because what is Google? It's not even really a search company. I would posit it's not even an AI company. It's an advertising company. And Google, just like ChatGPT, you'll see it over time. Once growth slows or infrastructure costs rise, and Google's infrastructure costs are super high, they have to figure out ways to monetize. One sponsored slot becomes two becomes three becomes four, and now you're talking about this morass of information. And even if the ad is clearly separated, it's still in the way. The logic is always understandable from a company's perspective. I get it. I see what they're trying to do. But don't they want the user experience to be good and to continue to be good and to feel elegant? Is there no other way for them to create a product that people actually want to pay for at the right price, that they can maintain the level of infrastructure and investment that they need? Because from the usage perspective, and again, I don't think I'm alone here, the experience always gets worse, always. And this is the familiar trajectory of platform economics: utility, scale, monetization. And again, to be fair, I paid for Excel. And when it went to a monthly subscription model, I still paid for it. Okay, when it came out every year, I didn't upgrade every year, but I still bought it. But if Excel or Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, Microsoft Office at scale had come with ads, I would have used something else. I really would. And Google did this with their suite of Office products, right? They did. So they never put ads in there, but they still wanted you to be on Google. Okay, that product was free. It was meant to get you into the Google ecosystem, but the place where they made most of their money, if not all of their money, was in the Google search where there were ads. Now, I don't think that OpenAI is acting irrationally, right? I mean, I think it's the reverse. We've already been through this. The incentive for them to do this are really high, although some of the other AI companies with whom they're competing are saying they're not going to do this, right? We know this, that AI inference is costly and it's getting more and more expensive. We know that the competition is really, really intense. And we know that the people who've invested all that money that we were just talking about in these companies, they expect some kind of return too. So a free tier with no meaningful monetization is difficult to justify forever. But again, I do like how the conversation changes from these big company owners and the people who run these companies, the big management at these companies, right? Because at the beginning they say, I mean, even Facebook said, it's free and it's always going to be free, right? Yeah. But remember, we talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago, said that they were actually thinking about charging for the product. Again, I would pay for Facebook if I didn't have to see ads. But to be fair, I never use Facebook, so a different story altogether. And from a company like ChatGPT or OpenAI's perspective, it may look like a decent compromise. But for me, from the user side, I don't like it. And let's be honest about what is and isn't being compromised as well. What do we want from our AI assistants? We want to be fast. We want to be clear. We want to be useful. We want the results that we get to be useful, right? We don't want any hallucinations, but we also don't want ads, right? If I ask it a question, I don't want to give me an ad and then give me an answer. We want to be able to trust it. We want to be able to trust that it's working with us and for us. Again, think about this in the analog world. If you had an assistant, a PA, a human who was working with you, and every time you asked them a question, they were like, here are 3 ad-served answers that I can give you because I'm being paid to say this. And when I'm done doing that, then I'll give you the real answer. Nobody would ever put up with this, right? Not at all. So that's the way I like to think about this. So some people will argue that this type of stuff is fine, so long as the ads are relevant and unobtrusive, and you know where I stand on this. There may be some truth to that. Like a well-labeled, contextually appropriate ad is definitely less harmful than a disruptive or manipulative one. But at some level, these companies want to keep making money. And I think the more they want to monetize, the less relevant those ads become, because there's an infinite amount of time and space to have an ad. And if you just want to keep selling more and more ads, you can do that. Right? I mean, again, there's infinite space on all these platforms, whether it's Google search or whether it's ChatGPT. You can put an ad anywhere and that's going to happen. Okay. And it's not the same. Even if that ad has some kind of relevance to what you're doing, it's still, in my mind, not going to make the experience better. Okay. I get it. There are billboards on every highway. Sometimes these ads can be super useful, and I get the fact that they can be economically rational. And I understand, and we said this at the beginning of this segment, that it can also open up usage for great products, and ChatGPT or any of these sort of any of these platforms are really great, and they can broaden access, right? Because if I pay for it and it subsidizes somebody else using it, that in a way does not bother me at all. But when compared directly with an ad-free experience, in my mind, and I think in everybody's mind, they're usually worse. And I know a lot of people out there, again, that either can't afford or don't want to pay for these products will say, I'm willing to put up with this mess of ads that are going to be everywhere. But we know that this experience are worse because they fragment your attention. And that's not good for anybody. They insert commercial incentives into environments that work best when they feel neutral. But I mean, it is annoying to search for something on Google, even search for an address for a restaurant and have 4 ads served before it. And it subtly erodes. We said before that we want to have trust in these products, that they're doing the thing that we want to do. But over time, the ads make the experience worse, in my mind, because they subtly erode the sense that the product exists to serve me, right? At some point, it feels like they exist to serve ads. And it's also worse because advertising becomes part of the revenue model, and the long-term pressure is usually towards more, not towards less. And that's bad for everybody. Because what I really want is I want OpenAI to build ChatGPT so it's super useful, better than any human assistant could ever be, and way smarter. What I don't want them to do is spend time building advertising infrastructure, taking that $110 billion that they just got paid as an investment from SoftBank, from Amazon and NVIDIA, and spend any more time building an ad serving business. I want them to build a better chatbot. I want them to build a better AI assistant for me. Okay. And we know this. Your personal assistant, if they're human, you have to trust them. At some point, you're going to give them your credit card. You're going to tell them to go buy flowers for your girlfriend on Valentine's Day. You need to be able to trust them. And I do think that there is a mirror between the analog and offline world and the online and digital world. They're based heavily on trust. Right. So in this case, particularly for something like ChatGPT, people that are using this, they're not just consuming content. They're relying on this system to help interpret information, structure thought, and support decisions that they're trying to make. And in that context, the cleanest and most trustworthy experience is almost always the one with the least commercial interference. That, I think, is true across the board. So yeah, you could make a positive argument for ads in AI. They can subsidize access for sure, and they can fund infrastructure at some level. They can make powerful tools available to more people. Those are real benefits, and they should not be dismissed. But to me, at the end of the day, the ideal AI product is one that feels useful, feels direct just for me, and undisturbed. Again, I don't want to be distracted. When I'm thinking and trying to do something and I have an idea and I'm testing out that idea and I do different iterations of it, I don't want to have a pop-up for some pizza. Like, I just don't. I don't want to be distracted by this stuff. And I think that's the trade-off here. But remember, the key to me is there's never less monetization. If there's even one little space left where somebody could place an ad, they're going to do it. And this, in my mind, this ad cluttered experience is almost always, by definition, worse than a non-ad environment. Okay. Is Jason Lemkin correct that it's just easier to work with AI agents than humans? So a big argument from the world of software startups is forcing a larger question into the open. And I want to say this too. Jason Lemkin, again, known for SaaS, known for SaaSTR. There's a part of me that really feels like he's nervous. He spent his entire life supporting software as a service. And we spent a ton of time in the last week or so saying, agentic AI is going to just destroy some of these SaaS businesses. And it's going to do it really, really quickly, right? There's a big question going on here. And it's forcing a much larger question. It's not whether AI agents are improving productivity, but whether companies are beginning to find them operationally easier to work with than with people. It's a big sort of existential question. And this was something that I saw online this week by Jason Lemkin of SaaSTR, who said his organization now runs more than 20 AI agents in production. And he was like, don't do what we do, but do something, right? With a much smaller human team. And that what worries him is not 2026, but 2027, right? Because 2026 is probably going to be a year of learning, right? 2027, when using an agent may become the default answer to many new workflows and open roles inside of his company and inside of other companies. We've talked about this as well. And in his telling, the issue is not that agents are always better. It's that for repeatable work, they may be easier to deploy, easier to scale, and easier to manage than a conventional hiring process. And while this may sound provocative, just think about the what's the right word? The evolution of every product you've ever used, right? Is it easier to use your cell phone camera? The best camera we say is the one you have in your pocket, the one that's in your hand. But even like a washing machine or anything that we've used over time that's replaced something else that's made it easier, it's always something that makes us more productive and way easier to use. And if an AI agent is just easier to use, it's just going to replace a human in a way that other things have replaced humans in the past. Okay? And again, this may be provocative to say that, but history tells us that it's probably true. Okay? And what Lemkin describes is not a world in which AI simply replaces labor overnight. That's why he said he's more worried about 2027 than 2026. And in fact, even in his own telling, it's much more complicated than the headline. I mean, it always is. We live in a world where headlines are clickbait, and where the argument, particularly from a gentleman as smart as Lemkin is just way more nuanced, right? He says that agents still require constant supervision. We talk about this a lot: retraining, iteration, and what is effectively a new managerial layer, often called agent operations, but I'll call it agent orchestration. And to be fair, I think you're also going to need what's called a guardian angel agent that's watching all the agents that you've actually implemented. So this is not, in my mind, frictionless automation. I don't think it ever will be. And to be fair, I don't think that we're going to have autonomous agents, something I spent a lot of time thinking about in the last week or so. We don't even have autonomous humans. Like, go look, if you run a company or if you're managing a team of like 10 people, you give full autonomy to all of those people? Do you really? I don't think so. I mean, at some point, they're going to have to come to their boss for a signature for something or get approval for something. There are edge conditions that come up. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to have an AI agent making decisions on the edge. Someone's going to have to approve this. Now, this will engender a new operating model where some of the work once done by hiring, onboarding, and managing people is instead redirected into configuring, monitoring, and governing software workers. And that distinction matters, right? Because for years, automation was mainly discussed as a story about labor substitution. Humans were doing this, machine take the tasks, and humans move upwards. But agentic AI changes the texture of this discussion in my mind because it doesn't just automate one narrow step. In some places, even in our own business, it can handle multi-step workflows. It can operate continuously. And look, I had a whole conversation yesterday with a guy who said that even inside his own business, he sees that these agentic AI implementations, they're talking to each other. And they're creating their own language because it's easier for them to communicate in a way that's more efficient and more effective for them rather than using the language that we want them to do. Okay, and think about this. I did a bit of research on it. McKinsey's research at the end of 2025 found that 62% of respondents said their organizations were at least experimenting with AI agents. And at the same time, the McKinsey report found that most companies are still in early deployment and only a minority is seeing large enterprise-wide financial benefits so far. And again, this just gets back to what Lemkin was saying, that he's not so worried about 2026 because it's not the case that AI agents have already taken over. The picture is that companies are testing a new production logic, and you have to think about this. If you have a role inside your company that has a repetitive task, and you're sitting there thinking, I can have an AI agent do 80% of that work, and somebody who's already here, like finish and do the rest of the work or oversee it, and then build an orchestration layer for all of these agents that I'm running that somebody else manages, it changes the nature of work for the people that are still at the company. But it doesn't necessarily change the nature of the outcome for the stuff you're trying to achieve. And we can already see signs of that logic in management behavior, right? Shopify's Toby Lutko publicly said in 2025 that his own teams have to demonstrate why AI cannot do a job, not can, but cannot do a job before asking for additional headcount or resources. That is an incredible result, right? In the past, if the work increased, the instinct was to hire. Under this model, the first question becomes, why is this still a human job? Mark Benioff, the famous CEO from Salesforce, said the company reduced support headcount from 9,000 to 5,000, just explicitly linking this to AI stuff. But this is where the story becomes more nuanced and frankly more important. Because the real economic issue is not whether the very best people will still matter. They will, they always will. And in fact, they'll matter more, right? We've talked about this a lot too. The more routine work is absorbed by software and by agentic AI, the greater the premium on judgment, relationship building, creativity, and accountability are going to be. And you know, you could sit there and say, well, these are just soft skills. That's not the way I see it. They're increasingly becoming the scarce layer of every great organization. If you have really good interpersonal and people-to-people skills, people are going to pay a premium for it because there just aren't going to be that many people around that do. And that part of Lemkin's argument is probably correct. Exceptional humans become way more valuable as average structured work becomes easier to automate. The harder question is what happens to everybody in the middle. And look, IBM's 2025 CEO study points in a similar direction. It found that only 25% of AI initiatives had delivered expected ROI over the previous few years. And just 16% had scaled enterprise-wide, right? And 65% of CEOs in their survey said they were leaning into AI use cases based on return on investment. And 31% said part of the workforce would need retraining within 3 years. And that may be the most consequential part of this story. Because the labor effect of AI may not arrive first as mass unemployment. Again, I don't think so, actually. It may arrive as a change in corporate reflex. Fewer hirings, fewer backpills, longer gaps between replacement hires, right? So if somebody leaves and they have a job that can be automated in a way, even if it's 70 or 80%, then you don't need a full person to come and do that. Then we saw this in our business when you sat on a portfolio trading desk at Goldman Sachs. It was not the case when we implemented the algorithmic trading. It wasn't the case that we replaced people with the algo. It was the case that we didn't hire any more people as our business grew by like 4 or 5 times. And once rote tasks became automated inside of our own business, the expectations for our performance skyrocketed. It was way higher because now you have all these great tools. Now you can focus on other things that require more thought. There was way more pressure on us to not get automated out of a job and to prove that actually the job that we were doing required some kind of human judgment or human intervention. And there were plenty of places where it did. Right. So more managers overseeing systems, I think, rather than teams is going to be something that happened. We saw it happen. There's historical precedent. We saw it happen at Goldman Sachs. And I believe that in that sense, the transition may feel less like a shock and more like a slow narrowing of opportunity in a lot of the places where white collar work is prevalent. And and there's a second order thing here as well. But I like to talk about second order impacts, right? Because in some ways they're way more important than the first order impacts. AI agents don't make a salary. They don't, right? They're working for someone that makes a salary. But in the old days, every time you hired a new graduate, you were giving somebody a salary, and that person needed to have an apartment. They needed to buy food, or maybe they had to buy gas for their car, or whatever it is if they commuted, or they rode the train, or they took the bus. But AI agents don't do any of this stuff. They don't even buy lunch. They don't take vacations. So they're not traveling to like Aruba. They're not flying down there. They're not paying for a hotel. They're not tipping people. And Lemkin makes this point, again, somewhat provocatively, but the underlying question is actually more serious. If more output is produced by fewer wage earners, and I don't want to get into the politics of UBI, there is a likelihood that part of the economy's traditional demand engine weakens. Higher productivity is great, but productivity without broad income participation can create a very different kind of economy, richer on paper, but more brittle underneath, because again, you're creating all this GDP because you're way more productive than you were in the past, but you're not creating any product demand, right? And the workplace is actually entering a phase where AI is no longer judged only by what it can do, by how cheaply and smoothly it can be inserted into the machinery of a firm. And that is why the date of this discussion matters, right? Because if he's thinking like, if this shift takes hold, 2026 may be okay, but the future of work is not going to be defined by a dramatic robot takeover, not a chance. It's going to be defined by something quieter and perhaps more disruptive. Just a change in the way things get managed, a change in the way that roles get filled. It's not that those roles won't be there anymore. It's just how are those roles going to get filled? And it may be the case that those new roles, this is the backfilling, right, are just not going to get filled by humans, but are much more likely to get filled at least to the 70 to 80% level that they can by some sort of agentic AI. And I would actually make the case, and I think Mark Cuban was making this case actually earlier today as well, that it's very unlikely, and maybe we'll do a full segment on this later, but very unlikely that an AI agent is going to take over internal to external communications. And I think part of the reason why is because there's just going to be too much noise. You're going to have hundreds. Think about how much spam mail you get today. You don't think you're going to get spam calls? Hundreds of them. No one's going to want that. And it's not going to be easy to filter them either. You're going to have this little war between your AI agent saying, to whom am I supposed to be speaking? And then tons of agents just calling you or contacting you and disrupting you all the time. And I think this is going to be a big deal. So the agentic stuff, I think is going to be great for internal productivity. But I don't think it's going to be great for internal to external conversations. Okay, we are going to be joined in a moment by Harry Folloder, the Chief Commercial Officer at Krisp, to explore how voice AI is reshaping contact centers and enterprise communication. We'll be right back. Okay, Ron. Harry, it's great to have you here. I really appreciate your time today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Krisp before we get started?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here on my
Awesome.
42nd day of Krisp.
I love it.
Fantastic to be
I
here.
love it. I love it.
So, Krisp is the leading voice AI platform in the world. We are instituting such incredible technological advances in the voice infrastructure, not only for enterprise, but for everybody, really democratizing voice as the single communication media for humankind.
And like how much has it changed in the past like 3 to 5 years from your perspective, right? Because one of the things you did say when we were offline was like former customer, now employee, you've been there for 42 days. You must have seen some pretty incredible technological changes. How does it feel today differently than it did like 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, I was on the BPO side. I was a global executive for one of the world's largest BPOs,
Oh, wow.
and I saw, I'm sorry, and I saw voice just starting to get diminished. You talked about so many other channels, you had text, you had WhatsApp, you had so many things, but we were getting away from the one thing that made us human, which is the ability to communicate with each other by talking to each other.
Yeah.
And one thing I fell in love with Krisp, a few years ago was they enhanced that. They saw that, they captured that moment and said, "Hey, we've got to make voice really great again." And through the years, I've been following them not only as a fan but as a customer. And the opportunity arose to join them and help champion that cause of really removing all the barriers out of voice communication.
You make a really good point, actually, if you don't mind me pointing this out, and that is for so many years, even something like email was supposed to die, right? All these things are supposed to die. But I do think it's really important for, like I always say, humans make visceral connections with other humans, and they do that through their voice, right? Like, sure, I can shake your hand, but I don't really get to know you until I start having a conversation with you. And I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in like where voice is going, because that's how I'm going to talk to you. Or like even if we didn't have the
Yeah.
video on, we'd still talk. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, absolutely not at all. I mean, see, look, we can even interrupt each other with voice. It's
Exactly.
really difficult to interrupt each other with text.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you think about it, you're exactly right. When you really need help, when you really want to communicate a point, when
Yeah.
you get frustrated, do you want to sit there and
No.
really give yourself carpal tunnel with your thumbs and go faster and faster? No, you want to, sometimes want to pick up the phone and yell at somebody. I know my 13-year-old daughter loves to pick up the phone and yell at me from the dance studio when she forgot something and it's my fault. So,
Right, exactly.
couldn't get
Always.
that same experience on a text message. Although I'm sure with enough emojis, you probably could get there. But the true communication barrier comes when we don't communicate. And I think when we don't utilize the natural emphasis of what makes us human, which is our voice. And it hits a little home for me personally. I have four kids. Two of my two oldest kids are blind. So they don't have an ability to take the world in around them visually.
I
So
just got a
voice is
chill.
so important to them. And
Yeah.
that's why this mission that Krisp is on that I've joined is so really personally important to me. And you see how voice helps us connect.
Yeah.
And that's where the interventions come in. I think Krisp can do not only from a voice perspective, but also removing barriers such as language, different dimensions of voice.
Oh my God. I don't even know what to say now. Like you cannot fake goosebumps. Right. Because I would have no way of knowing that about your two older children, but you're right. And the more you think about it, the sensory perception you have in your ears is like heightened, right? And I was going to ask you this question because when you can't see something, you're paying much closer attention. And I was actually going to ask you, is there a sort of accompanying video component to this? And is that important? Because if I can see you as well as hear you, well, then it has a different dynamic. But again, you see me like I'm closing my eyes on purpose because sometimes I do this when I'm thinking so that I can just
Correct.
ingest what you're saying
Yeah.
and hear it even better.
It allows you to focus. I always talk about the noise, right? The
Yeah,
static around you. I do the same thing actually. When I really want to be deep in thought, I'll close my eyes so that it really
same.
blocks out all the extra peripheral static and you can truly focus on what you're trying to talk about or understand. And it's interesting. Um, you said around video, and video is important. One of the items or the interventions we just released is, I say this not to talk about the
No,
product,
it's
but to
okay.
talk about the true interventions
Yeah.
that we're really doing is what we call bidirectional or accent harmonization or accent conversion, and it's really listener side. So if I'm ingesting, and I have a cousin who's in medical school right now, and she was watching a professor's lecture on nephrology and kidneys,
Yep.
and the gentleman is one of the leading nephrologist in the world, except he has a very heavy accent, and so it's very difficult for her to understand it.
Got it.
With our most recent invention, this is kind of where we come through with the strong engineering skills. That again, 42 days, I'm learning about all the great things we have with PhDs on staff and research and
Right.
everything. Tomorrow will be 43. I'll learn more.
I
Is
love it.
we released this plug into YouTube where there's no cost. Anyone can add it to YouTube. You turn it on, and it clarifies the accent. Doesn't change the person's voice, doesn't replace the person's voice. It clarifies the accent to be understandable so that points, education can get across without the intervention of someone's dialect.
Yeah. So this is actually super cool. Can I ask you this? So
Oh, please.
the newest versions of headphones, and I'll just use AirPods as a proxy, right, for all of them, just because it's something that everybody knows exists. But there's so much technology in there. Is there a way to embed that cut type of crisp technology so that when I'm having a conversation with somebody who have an accent in real time, it just automatically gets
Yeah.
translated into like what I would understand? And I'm putting it in air
Yeah.
quotes heavily as proper English. But again, for that person in reverse, because maybe they are used to speaking English with that particular accent, that it's easier for them to hear that, you know what I mean? And that goes directly into
Right.
their AirPods as well. Is that something that we're suggesting is possible?
So it's not only possible, we're doing it today. Now, not on device yet,
I got
but
it.
we do have a portion of our company that does SDK, so we are server side, so it can be on device pretty easily.
Yep.
But yes, 1000%, we want to make sure that each person in the party, and it's a global first. We're the only company in the world utilizing our research skills and engineering to do where the listener can actually smooth out the, let's say, the callers or the listener side accent. We've done it before, and we're leading in the industry where we have the ability to have the talker, the person actually helping, switch a button so that the person on the other side of the phone or VoIP, or choose your poison for your VoIP style,
Right.
can hear and understand a smoother accent. And again, think it's important. We're not replacing voice. We're smoothing out the voice because
I
we
got it.
never want to replace somebody's identity.
No, no,
We
no,
never want
no.
to lose the vital part of the human voice, which is the emotional part of the voice, right? The ups and downs and all the things that make us an intrinsic connection to be able to have this rapport that we've never met each other, but we can hear and talk to each other.
Yeah. And actually, this is kind of cool. And I hadn't thought about it. One of the reasons why I do love having these conversations, like I feel like I have the best job in the world because I really mean that though, because I spent a lot of time thinking about voice and AI and all this other kind of stuff, right? But I never thought about and I spent time thinking about like real time translation, right? So like if you were speaking French or German now, I would think about, okay, let's translate that into English so that Michael can understand it. But not about this idea about smoothing out, right? The cadence and stuff like that. So then I can hear the English in a way that's more natural to me. You're right though, without you, whoever you are, losing your personality because it's embedded in the voice that you're using.
Absolutely.
That's kind of cool, no?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it absolutely is fantastic. So we have you have the barrier of language, which is one that we've tackled, right? So we have the real time voice language translation,
Yep.
but then the accent, we call accented English, where we have so many brilliant people around the world with so many ideas to share, and accent got in the way, and accent doesn't need to get in the way anymore. We want to make sure that the free flow of ideas, the free flow of people that not only need to help, receive help, but most importantly, not lose themselves, not be replaced. There's never a replacement.
No, no, no. So again, let me give you a different perspective on this, right? Because I've lived outside of my home country for 35 years. So almost everybody to whom I'm speaking English is not a native English speaker, right? So I constantly saying, "Can you please say that again?"
Mhm.
Right? Not it's not their
Think how
fault. It's just,
many,
do you know what I mean? Sorry, go ahead.
right? And think how many times in your life, added up in an aggregate, how much how many hours, minutes, days of your life have
Tons.
we spent saying, "I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Can you repeat
Exactly.
that?" So not only from a your perspective, but also the person repeating it. So,
Exactly.
it's one of those things that it helps both parties just communicate more clearly
Yeah.
without having any sort of negative effect.
Yeah, and again, because I'm sensitive to the fact that like English is a global language, right? For no reason, like I didn't make it that, it just is that. But
Just
so when
is.
I go to other countries and people speak English to me, it's a luxury for me, right? That I don't have to learn that
Yeah.
other language. I do speak other languages, but it's just a luxury for me. And I wouldn't say it's insulting, but it's like in their mind, they're thinking I'm speaking English very well, and he's still asking me to repeat myself. And if you can remove just a little bit of that friction, you're right. That communication becomes so much more
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
And imagine, in kind of the industry that we operate in a lot, which is the customer experience industry,
Yep.
as anyone who invokes on their or goes in on their journey, whatever that journey might be, whether it's to purchase something, get help on something, negotiate something, they're already at a heightened state. And more importantly, like you said, without video, they have the hardest job in the world on the other side to develop this rapport with a stranger with just their voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anything that we could do to help intervene and make that easier without the, "I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't really understand you. Could you repeat that again?"
Yeah.
If we can remove that, that makes developing that rapport much quicker, and hopefully the problem or the piece of information or whatever that someone's trying to contact somebody about becomes solved quickly and easily.
Yeah. So you bring up a really good point here, right? This whole idea about customer experience. What and Like, what do you think big enterprises get wrong, or like they're not thinking about properly when they trying to figure out like where voice fits in
Yeah,
as an operating layer for this communication stuff, right? Maybe we can dig
yeah,
into that a little bit deeper as well.
yeah. I love that. That's one of my favorite topics.
Go for it.
Um, like you said, you started at the beginning, right? So email was supposed to die, all these other things were supposed to die, and we're going to plug a USB cable into our head, we'll never need to talk to each other again. Well, I don't know about you, man, I randomly still get faxes. I mean, crazy as that sounds, the fax
I
machine
love
ain't
it.
dead, and even though they said 50 years later it was going to die. So I think that voice is the thing that makes us human. So in a world where we have on a daily basis, where sometimes authenticity is very difficult to understand because you have bad actors, you have security items,
Right.
you don't know who to trust, and a comforting voice can help get you across the line for whatever you need. So I think voice is the interface. I think a lot of the times, a lot of efforts, a lot of companies have talked about trying to replace it with, omni-channel or texting or whatever. And I think all those are important for a multitude of different reasons. But the voice channel is not only gaining in popularity again, but I think it is the dominant consumer choice of how they want to get help, not only now but going into the future, and making that more of a stronger channel, both from a human to human connection, but we still apply all the same technologies in a human to bot connection. I think, you can fight it all you want, but it's coming. And it's here today where you have the ability to have a human-like conversation with AI. Now, I think, personally, you need to backstop it because there's always a need for a human to make sure it's safe and make sure that if they can't answer something or doesn't answer something correctly, that's there.
Right.
But no matter if it's human to human or human to AI, that connection needs to be clear and that connection needs to be in a voice format.
So again, you just bringing up so many interesting things, and this will shock you. I was telling this to somebody yesterday, but like I actually worked at Southern New England Telephone Company when I was in college, and I think if I remember correctly, it was a long time ago. You dial 411 to get like information
Oh yeah.
to get
Assistant.
somebody's
Oh
phone
yeah.
number.
Assistance. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's a
Absolutely.
word for it, and I can't remember what it was. It was just so long ago. But again,
I remember my dad used to, because they used to charge you per call, and
yeah,
then the phone bill would come, and it'd get yelled at.
exactly. Oh my God, please. How many times did I get in trouble for that? Do you remember when long distance actually cost money? Oh my God.
Absolutely. Yeah. Your dad yelling, "Go look at the yellow pages. Why did you call 411?"
Exactly. Exactly. But I did that job. And part of that,
Wow.
now, and I was, say it again.
Yes. Wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was so
That's really
incredible.
cool.
And like you can tell, I love talking to people. But one of the things that my manager did, because a lot of our calls were monitored, right? And this is kind of what I wanted to ask you because you made me think about this. My manager there at Southern, and I did it at night, right after school was over. He was essentially doing call orchestration, right? Just to put terminology into AI terms. And periodically, he or she would be monitoring all of the calls that we were doing. And sometimes I would talk a little bit too long because I love talking to people. And because I did it in the same time where my school was, every now and then somebody from school would call and I would be like, is this Mary from like the third floor? And my boss would kind of get mad. But the point is that like it was being monitored and it was being orchestrated and they didn't want you to say things that they didn't want you to say per se, right? How do we manage that? Because you said this, right? Like the bot stuff, the agentic AI stuff, particularly from a voice perspective, is coming. How do we orchestrate it and manage it so that, because one of the things that I've realized about these agentic AI and even just about AI in general is that it's not trying to solve a problem, it's trying to get something done. And it'll keep trying to get that thing done until it feels like it's accomplished it, whether it's actually making any progress or not. So, how do you orchestrate and then moderate what an automated voice is saying? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I do. I do. It's a fantastic subject, and we could probably have a whole nother session on it. That's a passion of mine, as well as voice security, which is a whole nother layer
We'll get
too.
there
We
too.
can
Yeah,
talk
because
about
that's important. Yeah.
authentication. Huge, huge, huge advocate of that. So on that one, it's all about the journey, right? So it's all about what we call journey mapping, and utilizing our expertise within voice. I think we process around 80 billion minutes a month, or 80 billion hours a month of voice today through our platform.
Oh my God. Sorry, go ahead.
We're It's crazy. No, it's crazy. We're learning so much about how people talk, right? We don't All of our customers' data is never used. All of our items run on device from a security perspective, so it's vitally important. But from the usage perspective, about what channels people use, how much accent is there. We're taking that into the agentic learnings. So different parts of the world operate this way when they talk versus that way,
Yeah.
and taking these learnings and making it local. And then when you provide those guardrails, and it really becomes how you institute the LLMs, and when you put the guardrails around making sure that, hey, if you can't answer something, stop. And that's why the backstopping of the human becomes so important, because when those guardrails are triggered and the trust and safety protocols are properly aligned,
Right.
it should be a good, like we saw a good robot, right? I'm a good robot, and I
Gotcha.
say, hey, you know what? In the very authentic voice, I've reached my limit of helping you. I think I need to get you to one of my human counterparts. So hold on a minute, let me get you there. Those transfers to their human counterparts or coworkers are important. We could talk about digital twinning, right? It used to be
Go
an
for it.
avatar related thing, but
Yep.
really digital twinning really stands for my digital twin is somebody who is on the other side of AI handling multiple calls for me. And once it can't be handled or it gets too complex, or say someone, you know what, as a customer, I just don't want to talk to a robot or I don't want to talk to AI. Great. Then they're there ready to pick up and carry on the conversation. And it's about that journey. It's about the graceful handoff. But going back to your original question, guardrails and this trust and safety concepts are so vital to those conversations to ensure not only trust that AI can help and can offer, because it can and it can save a lot of time,
Yeah.
but you have to make sure and ensure that it's a trusted engagement and it's a trusted relationship to do that. And it takes time to earn that, and you can't get it wrong.
No, you can't. I mean, I always say, as my grandfather said to me, it takes a lifetime to build trust and a picosecond to lose it, right? So you have to be really
I,
careful with
amen.
how you work on that stuff.
I have
In
that exact phrase tattooed like right here. It's crazy. Long,
tattooed on my
long
arm.
arms. It's a good thing.
Exactly. How do you work though with? How can I say this the right way? How do you work with enterprise clients who maybe are not as deeply involved in using these sort of automated voice agents, right? Yet, but how do you work with them on the governance side of this thing you were talking about with security and trust, so that they can also
Yeah.
feel comfortable? Do you know what I mean? Because if they haven't done it before at
Yeah.
scale,
So I mean, right now in our lab, we're developing the full voice security stack, which is so important to me. I mean, I have a big cybersecurity background, and
yep,
being able to authenticate who you are actually talking to, and I'll start with the human side first, because people are adapting and slowly adapting to agentic AI and voice AI, but we're not all there yet, especially in highly regulated industries like banking and finance and
yep,
healthcare. It's going to be a while because the regulators want to get it right, and as they should. So in the meantime, we're working on these bridges where how do you utilize voice prints? How do you utilize authentication methodologies with your voice to one, make it easier, more accessible, but also more secure, kind of like a FIDO key or YubiKey if you're familiar with YubiKeys,
yep.
but take that into the voice layer. Right now we always talk about authenticating the customer. Well, we also said, hey, that's great, but working with a few of our really good clients, we're like, what about authenticating the actual agent, the other person's side of the phone? So
Exactly.
making sure that the same person who picked up the phone at 9 a.m. is the same person that picked up at 11, and there's no malintent going on there, because in reality, fraud happens, and how do we prevent it? So we look at both sides of the equation, and we utilize voice as almost a security token. I'm so fortunate to the one of the co-founders at Krisp, David, was one of the original authors of the FIDO protocol, and
Wow.
so security is not only embedded in everything you do, that it's thought after on a daily basis. And how do we extend it? How do we actually make voice not only the best platform, but the most secure platform? And it's concepts like that. But more, I think most importantly, but one of the things I love about our product, sorry, it sounds like a commercial for a second, but it really is it runs on device. Like all of our products run on the actual edge device. There's no cloud connectivity.
Oh,
We're on the device, running on the device. All the customers, all the voice, everything stays on that device to ensure that it is secure and the privacy is always kept.
God, I have so many questions. I don't know if you're this technical, and if not, it's fine. But
Mm.
like, I always wonder how the change in throughput, right? Because again, I've been connected to the internet for years. Like literally, like the first computer that I bought at home was a Dell, and then I plugged it into a modem. It was a 56K modem. I can still hear that thing
So
ringing in my head.
do I
Exactly.
do I get to date myself and say that I had a 286. 386 was the upgrade. I think I had a 14.4 modem at the time.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I'm older than you, but still, like, you've at least had that experience, right?
Oh yeah.
So I've seen all these technological changes, but my point is that as soon as I got like two 64K ISDN circuits, it was just a different experience. You're laughing at me, but it was just like a
Oh yeah.
different experience.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, right? Because David, you said your founder has been at this for a while as well. But I'm curious, like in the last like 5 years, like I have gigabit Ethernet at home right now. Yeah. So the stuff that I can do here,
Oh
I never could have done before. So how does the throughput and the compute change the ability to do stuff on device? Because this thing
yeah.
is so powerful now. Do you know what I mean? How has that changed? And was it
Yeah.
palpable? Could you feel the change?
You can definitely feel the change. I mean, so as the engineers, and I'm a big nerd. Been nerd forever. I was the chief
Super.
technology officer and
Love it.
chief digital officer
Love it.
previously.
Easy.
But my nerdism here in my 42 days, like for a third plug, is learning. So I'm sure that one of our 9 PhDs will call me tomorrow morning or when they hear this and say, "Why did you say that?"
Right, right,
I don't
right.
know. New kid excuse. But from a hierarchical perspective, yeah, the ability to do things on the device has become greater and greater with each iteration. Moore's law better than anyone, right? But not only is it the CPU cycles, but now the GPU cycles
Yeah,
of all these different iterations. And we talk about AI chips, bringing the compute power to the edge becomes so important because it takes the latency out. You don't have to throw anything up to the cloud. Your gigabit, I got fiber running in my house with a Starlink backup and a
yep,
5G tertiary backup, because God forbid I be without internet, but probably more importantly, God forbid my kids be without YouTube, because there might be a mutiny in the household. So 3 internet providers, fantastic. If that ever happens, then zombies are coming if that doesn't work. But
exactly.
um, all of the connectivity in the world is never going to dissipate the latency that it takes, no matter if it's 2, 3, 400 milliseconds. In compute world,
Mm,
it's still a long time when you're waiting on something. But if you bring it to the edge, we have less than 80 millisecond, less than 50, 40 millisecond, less than a human ear can hear
right.
delay time for processing things, which makes it truly a real-time protocol for us.
Yeah,
Number one, from an experience perspective, and two, of course, from data privacy perspective, it never leaves. And that's
right.
the most important part. We never want it to leave the machine.
Yeah, and for people that like don't understand like how important latency is, just try to think of having a conversation with somebody where you say something and then it seems like they're not saying anything, but it's only due to the latency. Like the normal human to human conversation has zero latency, at least none that we can detect. And to be able to manufacture that again in real time across some digital divide is actually super cool, right? Because
No,
otherwise the
it is.
conversation's not going to work.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about, for your viewers, when you have really bad lag time on a movie or
Yeah,
YouTube, or
yeah.
the sound gets out of sync to somebody's lips, even for a second, it's annoying.
It's
And
unwatchable. Yeah, you
that's what
can't do
latency
it.
is. No.
Yeah. I just want to talk about a couple more things if you don't mind. If do you have
Oh,
time?
please. I've got all the time in the world.
So I go to like the same five restaurants. I think everybody's the same thing. You move into a neighborhood or you move into a town, you try everything, and then you're like, the service over here is the best. I like the steak there, whatever it is. But you go to the same place. And to be fair, if you really enjoy the restaurant, you have the same person. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a restaurant I'm thinking about right now. And when I go there, I want that guy to help me because he already knows me and he knows everything about me. I don't need to explain anything to him. Like he knows the knife I want. I'm serious, right?
Yeah. No, I get it. Level of service is the rapport, right? So we talked about it. It's truly the developing of rapport, which makes a tremendous difference in human connection.
So is it possible? Right. So again, when I call, and sometimes let's say you call an airline because you want to change your ticket or whatever it is, and the lady or the guy that picks up the phone is just super nice to you, and you're like, I really want this person's name so that when I call back, I can have that same person because they're so good. Is it possible to replicate that feeling? And you see me closing my eyes again because I'm thinking about this, but is it possible to replicate that feeling of I'm speaking to the same person, even if it's, an AI generated voice? Does that
Yeah.
question make sense?
It makes complete sense. And not only does it make complete sense, I think that you just really depicted the future well. Ultra personalized service is really the epitaph of what I think the industry is going for, where you could have and be met with your preferences every single time. So, you know, 60% of all calls, plus or minus, just in my experience, are all relatively handled pretty quickly through some knowledge in articles or knowledge bases, or even just some quick lookups here and there, which all can be derived and generated through this very personalized digital assistant.
Yeah.
And we're moving faster and faster to that. Like if I want to hear somebody talk in an Australian accent in a female voice, and that gives me the most calm,
Yep.
then every time I call my favorite airline or even my restaurant to place an order or whatever, that voice met me. I would know it's dependable, and more importantly, I felt at ease because that's my preference, and it was saved in my profile. So if I call from my cell phone, it knows my number and it greets me every time. And kind of to that extent, everyone has their own preferences. And, that's why I think it's not only vital the dimensions around the voice, but the dimensions around each and every individual and how they want to be served and how they expect to be served, because it breaks down the barrier of whatever's happening, whether it's an elevated conversation or just a regular, like you said, regular, I want to order, I want to order my sesame chicken. And,
Good
Roxy in
call.
the Australian female voice knows exactly, hey, Harry, you want your sesame chicken again? Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thanks, Roxy. Have a great day. You bet. It'll be ready in 20 minutes. And you want to use your same payment as you did last time? Absolutely. And the transaction's now done. I felt comfortable. I know I'm going to go get my sesame chicken, which I'll most likely spill on the way back home all over me. But regardless, I know it was great and it was quick and easy and I trusted it and it was convenient.
Exactly. Okay. I love having these conversations. I have so much more, but I don't want to keep you. I really appreciate your time. And I appreciate like your generosity as well. If you understand what I mean, like by taking different directions and by answering different questions and going in different ways.
Yeah,
Uh, I really appreciate
absolutely.
it. Harry
So
Folder, Chief Commercial
it was
Officer, Krisp. Thank you again so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
my pleasure. Look forward to do it again.
Thank you so much, man. Okay, that's it for AGTP Daily. Thank you again for joining us today. Give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Let us know in the comments if there's anything you'd like us to discuss on our upcoming shows. We'd love to do a bunch of AMA. Leave us comments everywhere. Ask us questions. We'll try to get to those as well. My name is Michael Waits. Bye for now.